Yeah, sounds good. Some of you who may have attended the past sessions will know that in general, I think the structure of uni is very, very different to what it's like in high school. So just an overview, it's like a lot less contact hours, firstly, and also much more flexibility in how you choose which classes, choose what time slots and what days of the week you want to go to uni. In terms of what law's like, then there's a difference between what law was like when we were actually back in uni and also what law is like now. When we were back in uni, it would be four contact hours, so 4 hours of seminar classes for each subject for 4 subjects. So in total, you'd have around 16 hours that you're spending in class at uni in a sort of in a classroom environment. And so the big difference now when it's been online is that the lecturers have a lot more flexibility as to how they want to run those classes too. So right now it's pretty dependent on the subject, pretty dependent on the lecturer, but generally we have a few recorded lectures, so 1 or 2 hours that you'd watch before class, and then you go in for a tutorial that goes for maybe 1 or 2 hours a week. So right now the commitment's actually not that high in terms of contact hours that on a Zoom call. So you're probably looking at 2 or 3 hours per subject across the 4 subjects I'm doing this semester. So yeah, in that sense, it's really different to what you'd expect at high school, where you have your 8 to 3:30, but not too dissimilar to the other courses like the arts and commerce and science and engineering, I imagine.
Yeah, awesome. Nick, what about yourself? What kind of structure have you found?
Yeah, so Eng is a bit different from what Kevin just said there with when you're actually on campus. I'll answer this like you're on campus just because I'm hoping that everyone's hoping, I'm sure that we'll be back there next year. So saying there was 4 hours like 4 hours of contact per subject for each subject. Engineering and science it's very subject dependent. So, I mean, first year uni, you do some of those like the chems, the physics, all that kind of thing, like the base knowledge. And there could be anywhere from 2 to 10 contact hours. And then again, that's the actual time you've got to be in there. And then there's still the knowledge you've got to get through lectures, which I think is it's the main way you learn at uni is just really someone talking to you for a lot of it, which can be tough to change from the school environment where you really are, the teacher can walk you through a lot of the stuff. But in terms of the structure at uni, it's really self-driven is the main difference, is what I found, especially in first year uni. It's a big difference. It takes a while to really get keyed into the way you've got to learn. But yeah, again, it's very dependent on subjects. And I found that the longer I've been at uni, the less contact hours I've had. I think that's mainly because there's less people, the classes are more intimate, there are less people in the classes and all that. So you are able to get closer to that one-on-one kind of teaching model that you get at school. Yeah, there are a couple of main differences just from school to uni that I've found. Yeah, as the contact hours may differ, but I think I found that the work, there's actually a lot more content to learn. There's not as many little homework things that you have to do like at school, like the teacher gets you, I don't know, do something each week, something like that. It's really, yes, as I said earlier, self-driven, and there is a lot of work you got to do away from the normal content that they teach you. Yeah, so it's just stuff you've got to, even like for instance, they give you in a lot of my subjects additional readings where they don't tell you have to do it, but you find that even some of the assessments, they rely on you doing them. So yeah, an advice on that is just anything they say is optional, I would recommend doing. I mean, even if you don't have the time, just try fit it in somewhere, because they love just stuffing you around and saying it's optional and then asking 20% of the exam on it. So that's just a little hint I'd give everyone.
Okay, what about you in terms of the study away from the actual contact hours you have to be at uni? What's your experience?
Yeah, it's probably a pretty similar story in the sense that it is, and I'd echo Nick in saying that it's very self-driven. So there's no teacher behind you cracking your whip, or no one behind you cracking your whip saying you got to get this done by this date, or you got to do these readings by this date, or you're going to get this piece of assignment in by this date. It's very much they will give you a schedule for your 12 weeks across the semester at the start of the semester. And you'll be able to see in week 1, you're learning this, in week 2, you're learning this, and week 10, you're learning this, and week 5, you'll have an assignment due, or week 10, you'll have a multiple choice exam due, for example. In terms of law specifically, the prep you do outside of class, I'd say the majority of the prep you do is the work outside of class, because there's a big focus on readings. And so for each subject, you'd probably get around, I'd say, as it depends on the subject, but you'd probably get around 60 to 80 pages, or sometimes it'll blow up to 100 pages of reading each week. And some of that will be allocated as compulsory reading that they sort of expect you to look at before class. And some of it will be optional reading. That sounds like a lot. It is a lot. Not everyone does the reading. Most people actually probably don't do the readings because it's hard to keep up at that pace for the entire semester. But the readings are one way for you to get your head around the content, and people use other ways, such as so if you're more of a reader, you tend to do the readings. If you're more of a sort of listen to the teacher in class, you'd probably be more attentive in class and take notes and ask questions and follow up with the lecturers afterwards. If you're more of a reading, if you're not much of a reader, you're not much of a listener, you might want to read summaries of the cases that have been covered in class, so you get a general context, so that you can go to class with some understanding of what's going on and pick up what the teachers are saying from there. So there's a lot of ways to sort of go about it. When I just say there's 80 to 100 pages of reading, that probably sounds like hell for most of the week for many of you who like your math or science subjects. For the guys who like the English and lit, might be heaven. But for me personally, I've tried to find a balance between doing some of the readings that I know are going to be pretty important for the exam, or the lecturers emphasize are pretty important for the exam, and then I'll chat to some mates from the year above and get their notes, get their exam notes they put together, and sort of learn off that too. And then I'll attend the lectures that I think are going to be very helpful in person, and I'll watch the recordings that I think are helpful. So
very flexible.
Very much a matter of like taking control of how you want to learn. And I think in law, it's probably most important, just because people hammer away at there's only one way of doing this. You got to do the readings, you got to go to all your classes, you got to do your pre-readings, read afterwards, make notes. But it's more about finding, as you said, Strath, what works for you. Yeah, it's similar but different. I think you generally have 2 assessments for each subject across the semester, one of which comes at the end of the semester during that exam period, and one of which will be like an interim, like a mid-semester exam or assessment in week 6 or week 7, halfway through the semester, and they'll be weighted accordingly. So generally, the end of semester exam, or sometimes an essay, will be worth around 80%. Sometimes we 50-50 split. In terms of what the assessment looks like, in law, you generally get 2 types of assessment. One is an essay assessment, which is you're looking at writing 2,000 words or 3,000 words on a particular topic that either the lecturer has given you, or you go out and find your own topic. So that would be pretty similar to a lot of the arts, what the style of assessment in arts courses. And then I think the more unique assessment in law is the exams. They generally assess you on these hypothetical, they're called hypotheticals, where during the semester you study the law, and then in the exam they give you a factual hypothetical scenario. So it'd be like a page or 2 of facts, and then your job in the exam is to kind of be a pseudo lawyer and use the law that you've learned throughout the semester and apply them to the facts. So that sort of structure of assessment is kind of like, it's kind of like applying your math formulas to the questions. It's kind of like seeing an English prompt and sort of writing in what you know about the book. But it's also very, very different in the sense that they're giving you a whole chunk of, this is what's like a hypothetical scenario of what's happened, and you sort of deal with it on the spot. So that's generally what the exams look like.
Yeah, awesome.
The alternative is essays.
Nick, what about you? What's your experience like being with assessment in engineering?
Yeah, so engineering, we've always got, for every subject, you've always got an exam at the end of the year, which can vary from there, the end of the semester, which can vary from anywhere from worth 25% to 60%. And yeah, so that percent thing at uni, one of the main things that changes is each bit of assessment, you know exactly how much it's worth. So you know something, you might have an assignment due on, say, this date, and it's worth 20%. So you know exactly what you get. That, say you get 90 out of 100, you get that 18 marks out of 20, and that just goes straight to your score. You add up all your scores at the end of the year, and that's what score you're given. Which is a bit different from school, because you don't, at the end of the day, like an essay you're giving to your English teacher, you don't really know how much that's going to affect your end grade. But uni, it's very much, this is worth this. In terms of the assessment throughout the year, engineering can vary. There's some subjects have a weekly, say, quiz that's worth 2%, which makes you stay up to date with the content, which I actually find is good, because otherwise sometimes you can get behind. You don't mean to get behind, but I mean, it happens to everyone. If that happens to you, don't feel like you're the only one. Everyone I know is very behind most of the time, and then they start working extremely hard towards exams. But in those subjects that don't have those little quizzes, they've normally got 2 to 3 big assignments, big maths assignments, where you've got a building or something, you've got to work out whether it's going to stay up, is an example of something you do. But so they give you all these numbers, you do all this method, but the main thing is, even in engineering, where it's very much maths based and numbers based, you'd think that, you know, if you get the numbers wrong, you get 0. But it's not. It's very much based on the method of how you've done it. And I've done assignments where my numbers are completely off, but you still get a pretty decent mark, just because the way you explain it, the way you do it. If your method's okay, then I find at Melbourne, they really don't care about the numbers if you're doing it right. Because I mean, out in the field, you're not doing it by hand, you're not doing any of that. Because they've got programs out there that you don't use these little methods you learn at uni. So yeah, they just care about you understanding the content. And the main thing is, I think, just showing that you understand it. You may not necessarily get it right, but just showing you understand it, I think, is the main thing in engineering that I've found through my uni so far. But yeah, just summing up, like, it's the main thing that's different is just you know exactly how much something's worth. So if you're going to miss something, you know, miss the one that's worth 1%, don't miss the one that's worth 20%. So Eng is, you have the option to do internships throughout the year, throughout your years at uni, but it's not as necessary as a lot of other degrees. Like, say, commerce, a lot of people just do the internship after 2 years, the grad role after 3 years. It's not as clear cut as that. But in terms of employment after your degree, it's pretty similar. So the last year of your uni degree, you just go through all the applications applying for grad roles, which at different engineering firms, or construction firms, or with engineering, there's a lot of different options you can go with. Construction, like engineering firms, all that kind of thing, like water, structural, yeah, all that. But yeah, so it's pretty similar. All the firms have pretty clear-cut graduate role like applications. They kind of walk you through it. You just fill in your details, put your resume in, and it's very easy to apply. And then going through the process is, you know, you'll get through one stage, next stage, you might get cut. And I think the main thing is, especially in engineering, there's not, I'll say it in terms of internship, there's not a whole lot of roles. So, I mean, if you get cut, I wouldn't feel too disheartened at any of those stages. Everyone gets cut from 80% of them. So it doesn't really matter. I think just the main thing is, another thing about applying for jobs and stuff is, the more you do, the better you'll get at it. The more practice, the more knockbacks you get, the better you get at it. You're not going to make those mistakes again, stuff like that. But yeah, it's pretty similar in terms of the applying for grad roles without degrees. It's not different at all.
Yeah, awesome. Kev, what about you? I know law is kind of very different in terms of the internship and the
Yeah.
leading into grad roles. What's your experience been like?
Yeah, it's also just occurred to me that there are probably a few different pathways that you can take out of high school into law, and that will affect sort of how you when and what times when you're applying for grad jobs and internships. And so it might just be worth flagging that generally people take two or three options out of high school studying law. One is to go and do a double degree in law and arts, or law and science, or law and commerce, and a lot of people do that at Monash, and that option takes 5 to 6 years. And then there's some people just do law straight, which would just be a 3-4 year law degree. You could do that at Monash or Deakin or La Trobe at various unis. And so the pathway I've taken is the one at Melbourne, which you can't do law straight out of high school, but you need to do an undergraduate degree beforehand and then do your law degree afterwards. So what I've done is done a Bachelor of Commerce first, and then after graduating the Bachelor of Commerce, started doing it's called the Juris Doctor law degree there. So in terms of how that affects like applications for jobs and stuff, generally you work backwards from the day the year you're graduating. So you work backwards 2 years. So let's say I'm graduating at the end of next year, then this year I'll be applying for internships, and those internships lead to grad jobs. So maybe I'll take a step back and just sort of like what is an internship, and when do you do them and all that stuff. An internship in law, they call them clerkships. It's basically a 3 to 4 week little stint that you do in a law firm, or sometimes will be with a barrister, or it might be in a big international law firm, or a small sort of community law practice, or with a government lawyer. And so you spend 3 or 4 weeks there, sort of experiencing what it would be like to work there. So you go in 9 to 5. They introduce you to their systems, give you a bit of training, and give you a bit of work, and see how you are. And so it's a chance for you to experience sort of what it's like to work full time, and then also a chance for them to look at you and go like, is this a person that we want to bring in as a full-time employee after he or she graduates? And in that sense, what they're looking for is simple stuff like, does he have good soft skills, takes the initiative, has good communication skills, teamwork, all that sort of stuff that helps you both in the internship time you're doing an internship, and also when, as Nick said, when you're applying for the internships. The difference between law and Eng, I think, is that the internship and graduate pathway is probably the most common way to get a graduate job. So you apply for your internship, and then through your internship you get a graduate job. I think most people try and go down that path, but again, even if you don't get an internship, there's still many ways to get into a full-time job. Right, some through just applying for a graduate role straight up, and some through getting some legal experience elsewhere first, a paralegal, or there are a lot of ways in. But yeah, the internship way is probably the most sort of traditional route, and the one that sort of everyone in their second year. August rolls around and you start doing video interviews, there's verbal reasoning assessments. In this day and age, I had last year online interviews on Zoom. And then from that, you go into your internships, and from your internships, you go into your grad roles. So that's generally the pathway. Yeah, the getting into law, it really depends. So in the past, the year I went from graduate from commerce went to law, I think it was you needed a 75 average, which is think of it as like that's probably like a B plus A average. And for your LSAT, just for some context, the LSAT is ranked. You get a score from 120 to 180, with 150 being the median score. And so I think I had friends who with around 155 or 160 LSAT, which is probably in the top 30 to 40% of people who sit the LSAT. With that combination, they got in to the Juristocks at Melbourne. In recent years, apparently it's 1 year, like a couple of years ago, blew up to you had to have an 80 average and a 160 LSAT. But the advice I give would probably be it depends, and just try and get the highest grades you can in your uni studies. Start preparing for your LSAT. If you're sure you're going to do law, start preparing to sit your LSAT in your second year of undergrad. I think you get multiple cracks at it. You can do it 2 or 3 times. And generally, once you get the hang of the questions, the second time you'll do better than the first, and the third time you'll do better than the second. But yeah, in terms of scores, I think it really depends. How did I find the LSAT exam? It's there are 3 sections. It's a long exam. I think it goes for like 4 hours or 3.5 hours or so. There are 3 sections, all of which you can practice for. One section is like an analytical reasoning section, which is kind of like a more sciencey math style of thinking, but with words. And then there's a logical reasoning section, which is it's like trying to chain together sentences and figure out like little nuances in the wording. And then there's a reading comprehension section. And though that might sound a bit daunting right now, it's once you get the hang of it, it's like getting used to that style of questioning and doing the practice questions. A lot of practice questions online, and a lot of people you can talk to have done the LSAT who can help you as well. So I wouldn't worry about the LSAT being a big barrier to you going from undergrad into postgrad law.
Yeah, I've got one really big bit of advice that I was told before I started uni, and it's one of the best things I got told. Well, and I'll say this, like basing everything that hopefully everything goes back to pretty much normal at the start of uni next year. And I think I said this last year when I did this. The main thing I would say is first year uni, everything that you can go to, just go. Like OCamp, anything else like that. Again, I'm hoping that you're able to do all this, but just do it, because most of my uni mates I met in the first year of uni through everything, through all those like events and stuff. So just go to as many things as you can is the main thing I'd say. And even like having mates in your course is so important, just because, as I said, there's no teacher really there is, you can ask the teacher questions, but it's not as easy at school. And bouncing ideas off friends that are doing the same subjects as you is so important. Like little study groups and stuff has literally got me through uni.
Yeah, awesome. Kev, what about you?
My tidbit would probably be to, so on a similar note, to get involved in extracurriculars or part-time work related to your degree. In terms of law, the thing I've really found this helpful is that getting some insight into what it's like in the workplace and how sort of law is actually applied when you're working with clients is a really good way to ground what you're learning at uni in context. Otherwise, it's a lot of content that hits you pretty hard in the first couple of years of law, and it's like, for me, I think if I hadn't started working part-time and seeing how it will fit in to the real world, I sort of struggled with like, this is quite theoretical. So I think if you can take the initiative, there are a lot of little first year programs that the big commercial law firms offer. There are a lot of opportunities that the uni offers for work experience. There are just a lot of opportunities floating around on the careers, the uni careers page, or even like seek.com or LinkedIn, where you can get a part-time job and get an insight into what law is like in practice, so you can see the practical side of what you're learning. And I think that helps you be more interested in what you learn too.